I've got some troubling news about England's royal family.
There were not many people who understood just how broad his interests were and how supportive he was of an astonishingly wide range.
Catherine can access my personal fortune, not Camilla. 7 words written by Prince Philip, locked away for years, and now they've detonated inside Buckingham Palace. What if I told you a single letter hidden deep in the royal archives has the power to wipe out a queen consort's entire legacy? To erase her place in history and hand everything to the one woman Camilla never expected. Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, the man who stood quietly beside Queen Elizabeth for 70 years, left behind a letter that wasn't just about who inherits what. It was a weapon, a ticking time bomb, a final act of defiance. And here's what the palace has tried to keep buried. Queen Elizabeth read this letter before Philip died. She cried. She agreed with it. And she never told anyone. Right now, at this very moment, there are senior royals who wish this document had been destroyed, who tried to bury it, who are terrified of what will happen when the public learns the truth. Because what Philip wrote wasn't simply Catherine gets the fortune. It was Camilla threatens everything we've built. She must be stopped. Why? What did Philip witness behind those palace walls? What did Camilla do or symbolize that scared him so deeply he felt the need to leave instructions from beyond the grave? Before we reveal every shocking detail, the secret meetings, the legal clauses that shut out Camilla's family forever, the alliance that protects Catherine and Prince George's mysterious message that went viral, you need to subscribe right now. Hit that button, turn on notifications, because the royal PR machine is working overtime to kill this story. And YouTube's algorithm could bury this video before you hear the full truth. The discovery. Picture this, a routine archive review, dusty folders, standard procedures, and then silence. The kind of silence that comes right before an explosion. The letter was hidden under decades-old estate documents, marked only with Prince Philip's unmistakable personal seal and a chilling handwritten note, to be opened upon my passing in the presence of the keeper and one blood heir. Think about that. Philip knew this letter would be opened after his death. He knew it would unleash chaos, and he sealed it anyway. Why? What could possibly be so important, so volatile, that he would plant a time bomb inside the palace? Here's where it gets wild. Only a handful of people inside the inner court even knew this letter existed. Not Charles, not William, maybe not even the Queen herself, at least that's what the public was led to believe. When that seal was finally broken, according to multiple insiders who witnessed it, time just froze. Senior officials, legal advisors, the keeper of the Privy Seal. Everyone stood in stunned disbelief. Because what Prince Philip declared wasn't subtle. It wasn't diplomatic. It was sharp, precise, and brutally direct. His personal fortune, earned quietly and completely separate from crown funds, was to go to Catherine, Princess of Wales, and specifically, intentionally, not to Camilla, Queen Consort. Let that settle in. The Duke didn't just favor Catherine. He purposefully cut Camilla out in writing, with legal witnesses present. This wasn't a preference. This was a strategic strike. Those who heard the letter described the room as suffocating. One aide later admitted anonymously, it felt like Philip reached from the grave and grabbed the monarchy by the throat. The wording left zero room for interpretation. Philip praised Catherine's unwavering commitment to duty, drawing a sharp contrast. And we need to understand just how devastating this was when he warned of conflicted motivations threatening the clarity of the crown. Who do you think he meant? Who embodies those conflicted motivations? The impact landed like a freight train. At Clarence House, where Charles and Camilla believed their influence was firmly secured, panic exploded. Advisors rushed to confirm whether the document was real. Could it be a fake, a tabloid fantasy, a creation by anti-Camilla circles? But every test, every review, every legal check delivered the same verdict: authentic, indisputable, final. It was Philip's unmistakable handwriting. Sharp, intentional, absolute. And here's where the story turns even darker. Behind closed doors, senior courtiers, the ones whose job is to protect the monarchy's image at all costs, debated whether the letter could simply be buried. Imagine that, a royal's final wish hidden to preserve political convenience. There were quiet attempts to file it away, to downplay it, to pretend it never existed. But those attempts were blocked by an extraordinary internal override from the keeper of the Privy Seal, who insisted Philip's final command be honored and formally recorded. One official summed it up perfectly. The letter was a political earthquake disguised as royal paperwork. But just wait, because what comes next is heartbreaking. New evidence suggests Queen Elizabeth herself knew about the letter. According to leaked diary entries from a former lady-in-waiting, the late Queen was shown the sealed document weeks before Philip passed. She read it. She understood its meaning. And she cried, but she told no one. She said nothing. She carried her husband's final act of rebellion in silence. Was it respect for Philip's wishes? Was it fear of tearing the family apart? Or did she know that revealing it while she was alive would shatter the institution she spent 70 years protecting? We may never know. But the fact that she took that secret to her grave says everything about how dangerous this letter truly was. The fracture Philip witnessed explains why he took such a bold, personal, and politically explosive stand. To understand it, we need to go back to his final years and see what he saw inside those palace walls. Because behind the public smiles, the staged appearances, the polished ceremony, Philip saw something that terrified him: a monarchy fighting itself. In his last years, Philip watched two completely opposite visions for the crown's future grow stronger. One based on duty, discipline, and tradition. The other driven by disruption, reinvention, and personal ambition. And what shook him most wasn't the scandals or tabloid chaos, it was what happened in private. The growing divide between two rising factions that threatened to tear the monarchy in half. On one side, William and Catherine, representing restraint, accountability, and quiet service. The next generation preparing to carry the weight without complaint.
It is a year since we launched the Royal Foundation Centre for Early Childhood, and the reason for the centre's launch was twofold. It was to not only help improve the early childhood outcomes, but it's also about prevention.
On the other, Charles and Camilla, pushing modernization and shaking up old traditions, but creating deep unease among traditionalists and even within the public itself.
Really, please let us not become too politically correct.
Philip, always the long-term thinker who spent years studying how monarchies endure and how they fall apart, recognized the serious danger of two competing versions of the monarchy forming at the same time. In private talks with senior aides, he expressed worries not about progress itself, but about confusion, about two different paths pulling the crown in opposite directions and weakening its identity. A monarchy can survive scandal and it can survive public backlash, but can it survive losing its sense of purpose? According to several palace insiders who have now spoken out, Philip became increasingly troubled by Camilla's growing influence over both public messaging and behind-the-scenes decisions. Philip understood hidden power better than anyone since he had lived it for more than 70 years, but what unsettled him, what reportedly kept him awake at night, was how Camilla's expanding influence seemed to push priorities away from the institution and toward personality, away from unity and toward personal interest. His concern was not emotional, it was structural. He believed a monarchy built on mystery and cohesion could not survive mixed loyalties and a weakened mission. In one recorded conversation with a senior courtier, a conversation never meant for the public, Philip issued a serious warning that if parallel lines of power are allowed to exist, the crown loses its center. Looking at the royal family today, do you think his warning was misplaced? At the same time, Philip's respect for Catherine had grown quietly but strongly as he saw in her something rare and essential, the steady discipline he once demanded from younger royals.
Earlier this year, we asked you 5 big questions about raising our under 5s. We wanted to hear what you think about the importance of the earliest years of our children's lives.
The ability to withstand scrutiny without scandal, to project steadiness without theatrics, to remain grounded while everyone else spun around her, and to Philip that steadiness was not weakness, it was strength. While others engaged in image battles and PR conflicts, Catherine simply remained there, firm, calm, and present. According to a footman who served during Philip's final year at Windsor, the Duke once described Catherine as the backbone of the monarchy, even if no one had recognized it yet, remarkable praise from a man who rarely praised anyone. But Philip's concerns stretched far beyond personal preferences or family tensions. During late-night calls to Windsor in his final months, he raised alarms about succession vulnerabilities that could unsettle everything. With Charles closing in on the throne, a king who had waited longer than any heir in British history, Philip feared that lingering public distrust surrounding Camilla's role could spark a constitutional crisis. What if public confidence kept eroding? What if internal factions turned into open dissent? What if the fragile balance that kept the monarchy steady for 1,000 years simply broke apart? For a man who had watched monarchies collapse across Europe in the last century, these were not hypothetical thoughts. They were warnings written in historical experience. So Philip acted as a military strategist would. He prepared for every possible scenario, including the one where he would no longer be alive to maintain control. That is what this letter represented. Not revenge, not favoritism, but strategic intervention. Catherine's summons began when Princess Catherine was called to a private meeting at Windsor expecting another routine briefing about protocol, patronages, and standard duties, but instead she received an envelope that would change her life forever. The seal was already opened. The letter was placed before her on centuries-old mahogany surrounded by portraits of monarchs who had endured their own reckoning, and as the words were read aloud, Philip's words in his distinct voice, sources say Catherine became completely still, not startled, not overwhelmed, simply still. Because this was not about wealth, it was about power, loyalty, and betrayal wrapped into one impossible responsibility. Prince Philip had named her, not the Queen Consort and not one of his own children, as steward of his personal fortune, a fortune built through trusts, investments, and foreign accounts entirely separate from the sovereign estate, tens of millions accumulated quietly over decades and now entrusted to her. But it was not the money that shook Catherine, it was the weight of his confidence, the realization that the man who spent his entire life avoiding public displays of favoritism had just made one, with her name emphasized in history's ink. Later, alone in her Kensington study, Catherine reportedly read the letter 3 more times, and her inner circle, trained to read her silences, described her as shaken but not unsure because the meaning was unmistakable. To follow Philip's wishes would mean challenging Camilla and possibly Charles himself, but to ignore them would mean disregarding the man who, in his final written act, chose her to carry his legacy forward. This was not just an inheritance, it was a summons. Prince William's reaction, according to several palace aides, was far more complicated. He found himself caught between loyalties that could not coexist, a father who had finally ascended the throne he waited his entire life for, and a wife suddenly drawn into a high-stakes battle she never asked to enter. The Prince of Wales grew tense and unusually short-tempered, and he was heard pacing through Windsor's East Gallery late at night saying he knew exactly what this would cause, because Philip did know, of course he knew, the Duke of Edinburgh never acted without purpose. This was deliberate, intentional, designed to force a decision that could not be postponed. In a family that measures loyalty through quiet signals and small gestures, this letter was a thunderclap that refused to fade. Catherine, realizing she needed insight from someone who understood Philip's thinking and the monarchy's survival instincts, turned to the one person she trusted completely, Princess Anne. Rumors circulated that a discreet meeting occurred between them in the private gardens at Sandringham with no aides and no staff, just two women facing an impossible moment. Anne, known for her steadfast loyalty to both her father and the institution, reportedly gave Catherine advice that would shape everything. Do what he asked, but do it in your own way. That guidance may have grounded Catherine, because what came next was a masterclass in royal strategy. Catherine made no public announcement, she ignored the press, she offered no explanation, but what she did instead sent a message stronger than any official statement. She ended all direct communication with Camilla, no words, no messages, not even a glance during public engagements. For a family that relies on silent diplomacy and unspoken signals, this was a rejection louder than scandal. And as time passed, courtiers noticed something else, something quiet but undeniable. Catherine's influence was expanding. Briefings were sent through her office, patronage updates came from her private secretary, and invitations to important events were addressed to her first. The power balance was not shifting with loud arguments or dramatic confrontations, it was moving slowly, intentionally, and clearly in her direction. The question circulating through the palace became how far Catherine was willing to go, and more importantly, how far Camilla would go to stop her. Camilla's retaliation came quickly because the Queen Consort was never meant to be pushed aside, and when Philip's letter was read during a confidential Privy Council review, her fury was immediate and intense. Those in the room, veteran courtiers familiar with decades of royal turmoil, described her reaction as explosive, and one aide quietly admitted that the sound of objects being thrown was heard inside Clarence's house shortly after. Because this was not about wealth or property, it was about legitimacy, identity, and the need to be recognized not only as Charles's wife but as a rightful leader within the monarchy, and Philip's letter targeted that very claim. Hours later, Camilla called King Charles into a private confrontation, and what started as a tense discussion reportedly escalated into indirect ultimatums that left even Charles unsettled. Palace insiders said she threatened to pull back from public duties entirely as a form of pressure unless the situation was controlled and explained before the press could twist it against her. Imagine the weight of that. A newly crowned king trying to steady his reign while suddenly facing a choice between his wife's dignity and his father's dying wish. This was the exact nightmare scenario Philip may have foreseen and, in a darker sense, possibly intended. Camilla didn't just respond emotionally, she took action. Immediately, Clarence House staff began working behind the curtain to minimize the letter's legal significance. Carefully worded statements were drafted implying the document reflected personal thoughts, not binding instructions. Selective briefings were passed to friendly reporters suggesting Prince Philip had written many private notes in his final months and that this one might have simply been another unfiled reflection, but the damage was already done. The letter wasn't rumor. It was signed, witnessed, and entered into the royal archives. It was as official as any royal record could be. When that strategy failed, Camilla turned inward and strengthened her support among the palace's most influential advisors, particularly the Protocol Clarion, a long-standing advisory circle specializing in constitutional history. The group met privately at Highgrove, where Camilla allegedly demanded a full audit of all shared royal patronages where Catherine had influence. The objective was unmistakable: rebalance power, tighten control, and reclaim authority. Soon after, quiet but intentional shifts started appearing across the royal system. Two charities tied closely to Prince Philip were suddenly moved under Camilla's oversight. An educational program previously led by Catherine was paused for structural review, and then came her boldest move yet. Camilla started laying the foundation to fast-track her son Tom Parker Bowles into a formal palace position under the banner of modernization and public outreach. The message was unmistakable. This legacy would not skip over her family without resistance. But even that was not the final step. Reports surfaced that the keeper of the archives, the very official who approved the release of Philip's letter, was being quietly pressured. According to one source, a strongly worded phone call from Camilla's office raised concerns about security breaches and internal loyalty, language many believed was a thinly veiled warning. The keeper, a longtime loyalist to both the late Queen and Prince Philip, refused to fold. But the meaning was clear: challenging Camilla came with consequences. Yet while the Queen consort secured her defenses and prepared for all-out conflict, another faction inside the palace started quietly assembling around the very woman Philip had chosen to protect. Not everyone in Buckingham Palace supported Camilla's retaliation. In discreet meetings conducted with almost intelligence-level secrecy, a powerful new alliance was formed. Insiders called them the Inner Four. Their mission was unmistakable: protect Catherine, honor Philip's final request, and ensure the monarchy's survival would not depend on Camilla's control. Their members were Princess Anne, Philip's unwavering daughter who understood royal duty better than anyone; Duchess Sophie, whose calm diplomacy earned trust across rival groups; Sir Clive Alderton, the king's private secretary who, despite his role, had always been wary of Camilla's growing power; and Lord Fellows, a legal expert so deeply connected to royal protocol that many referred to him as the living archive. Together, they formed a silent barrier against what they viewed as a dangerous diversion from the monarchy's rightful path. Their first meeting took place secretly at Sandringham, arranged through Anne's personal network, and security was so strict that even household staff remained unaware of who was meeting or why. There, they examined Philip's directive, the letter's legal weight, its implications, and its deeper meaning. A leak from a staff member who found discarded notes claimed the tone was urgent and the mood was unyielding. One line in those notes captured the essence of the meeting: "This is not rebellion, this is preservation." These weren't renegades. They were the monarchy's immune system, activating to defend against what they saw as a threat. Lord Fellows raised the first major concern about estate structure. If Philip's private wealth was intended for Catherine, an ironclad legal foundation had to be built so it couldn't be challenged or undone. Sir Clive confirmed something startling. Before passing, Philip had begun restructuring certain assets, investments, and offshore trusts to ensure they were completely separate from Crown property. This wasn't an emotional whim, it was strategic, and it had been in motion for years. Then came a chilling discovery buried deep in the estate documents, a secondary clause rarely cited and even less understood. It referred to the appointment of an unshakable moral steward, a phrase never seen in any past royal directive. The Inner Four believed this was coded affirmation of Catherine, not just as beneficiary but as something far greater, a symbolic transfer of moral guardianship, a safeguard for the monarchy's ethical future. Philip wasn't merely leaving money. He was choosing the crown's conscience. Tension rose when Princess Anne reportedly revealed a detail that reframed the entire situation. She had personally delivered Philip's original letter to Catherine. If true, this meant, and had always known, it meant the plan was broader, older, and far more deliberate than anyone realized. It also meant and wasn't just a participant. She was the messenger of her father's final intention and, in many ways, its executor. Meanwhile, another group inside the palace, the Clarion Ring, made up of Camilla's loyalists and longtime traditionalists, began monitoring the inner four's movements. Tensions built. The palace increasingly resembled a chessboard, with each faction making precise, quiet maneuvers. Camilla's allies moved to intercept information, and the inner four responded by becoming even more covert, relying on intermediaries, handwritten messages, and trusted advisors to conceal their strategy. But Philip didn't leave behind only one document. What surfaced next cast an even darker shadow over Charles's rule. The Sunset Provision. For years, rumors had circulated about a mysterious clause hidden within Philip's private directives, known only as the Sunset Provision. When a sealed annex was discovered in his Geneva lockbox, a location chosen specifically because it lay outside Anne. When it was finally opened in the stone-cold silence of a Geneva vault with attorneys from 3 nations present, the truth surged back toward Buckingham Palace like a tidal wave. The annex, once labeled Courtesil 4B, held instructions of astonishing finality. In it, Philip declared that no assets, whether financial, symbolic, or institutional, could pass to or through any consort without sovereign bloodline. Read that again and let every word sink in. In effect, it completely excluded Camilla and any descendant or dependent of hers from any claim, not only to his personal fortune but to every structure, tradition, or legacy connected to his name. It was a clean and intentional break executed with surgical precision. The wording was chilling in its certainty. The Sunset Clause, as his legal team later confirmed, was created as a safeguard against what Philip described as the misdirection of institutional value toward individuals outside the line of succession. He framed it publicly as a constitutional necessity, even though privately everyone knew the meaning beneath his careful phrasing. Camilla had been removed formally, lawfully, and permanently. The reaction was immediate. Charles's legal advisors were thrown into complete panic. Because the document was notarized in Switzerland, UK estate law had zero authority to challenge it. There would be no quiet edits, no behind-the-scenes adjustments, no hidden loopholes. Even worse, the clause was absolute. Any attempt to override it would activate a reversion clause, sending the entire estate, valued in the tens of millions, to an undisclosed external trust. If Charles tried to interfere, the whole fortune would vanish from the Crown's control entirely. A senior advisor reportedly said, Philip planned this like a military strategist. He left no opening anywhere. But the most damning question remained. Who else had known? Attention turned sharply toward Princess Anne. Rumors swirled that Anne had long known about the Courtesil and had kept it hidden like a last resort weapon. If she had delayed its release, it wasn't out of spite. It was tactical, waiting for the exact moment when the palace fractures were wide enough for the clause to hit not as chaos but as justice. And refused to confirm or deny anything, maintaining a silence that spoke louder than any statement. To those paying attention, it was becoming unmistakable. This wasn't just a forgotten letter from an aging patriarch. This was a time-locked detonation planted with patience, designed to erupt at the moment it would inflict maximum damage on those Philip believed endangered the monarchy's future. And now it had detonated. Catherine's masterstroke followed. In a move that stunned even her closest supporters, Catherine responded not with anger or retaliation but with deliberate and exacting strategy. She created a new foundation, offered a symbolic pledge, and initiated one quiet but devastating transfer of power that secured Prince Philip's legacy in a way no one saw coming. She didn't hold a press briefing or stage a dramatic announcement. Instead, early one morning, the Royal Communications Office released a calm, understated statement that changed everything. The establishment of the Philip Stewardship Trust, a private, independent institution built to uphold the values Philip had lived by: service, duty, modest resilience. The brilliance was in its design. The trust would not fall under Buckingham Palace authority. It would answer to the public and operate with full legal independence. Catherine had effectively moved Philip's legacy outside the monarchy's direct control and placed it with the people he always said were the reason the monarchy mattered at all. Royal analysts were stunned. The legal teams who had stressed for weeks over the Sunset Clause suddenly found themselves completely boxed out. Catherine, with one quietly powerful move, accepted Philip's wishes without appearing to seize wealth or privilege. She declined inheriting the fortune directly and instead appointed trustees known for integrity, independence, and loyalty to her broader vision. By doing so, she denied Camilla any access, not through confrontation but through legal design, not through emotion but through structure. It was graceful. It was clean. And it was absolutely crippling. And the shift didn't end with funds or titles. Catherine redirected several of Philip's most cherished patronages, his military ties, his conservation work, even the Duke of Edinburgh awards. But instead of assigning them to senior royals, she handed them to the next generation: Prince George, Princess Charlotte, Lady Louise Windsor. It was a quiet succession blueprint built on legacy rather than politics. Catherine wasn't clinging to Philip's memory. She was planting it forward where it could evolve and endure. The public reaction was explosive. Catherine's approval rating skyrocketed to heights last seen during Princess Diana's early years. Editorials called her the moral compass of the crown. Social media erupted in what critics labeled the quiet coronation. Meanwhile, Camilla's reputation, already weakened by the letter, collapsed further. Analysts noted that for the first time in years, Camilla symbolized division while Catherine represented stability. Then came the moment that ended any remaining doubt. In an unreleased portion of a BBC archival documentary, footage finally aired showing Prince Philip seated beside Queen Elizabeth, speaking honestly about the younger royals. When asked who he believed truly understood duty, he paused, smiled slightly, and said, "Catherine. She's the one. She knows when to speak and when to let the moment speak for her." The clip aired worldwide. The timing felt impossible to dismiss as coincidence. Under immense pressure from both public sentiment and legal reality, Buckingham Palace issued a brief statement officially recognizing Catherine as the steward of the Duke's private charitable intentions. No ceremony, no spectacle. The Queen Consort said nothing. King Charles, according to aides, raised no objection. Calm settled over the palace like snow after a storm. Yet even as the quiet returned, one final whisper of Philip's long game emerged, from the future itself. During a low-key engagement in Wales, with cameras rolling, young Prince George was asked what he wanted to be when he grew up. Standing beside his mother, surrounded by schoolchildren, he paused, looked toward Catherine, and said, "I'll do what great-grandpa asked. I'll take care of it." The clip exploded across the internet within hours. The line was cryptic, startlingly mature, and immediately tied to the months-long crisis shaking the monarchy. Was it rehearsed? Coincidence? Or had the young heir already been gently prepared to carry a legacy written long before he was born? Royal press staff scrambled to frame it as an innocent remark, a sweet nod to family history. But inside palace walls, whispers suggested something far more intentional. Insiders close to Catherine said she had begun carefully introducing George to Philip's life, not through formal briefings but through stories, guided lessons, quiet afternoons with a specially selected private tutor. This tutor, they said, was chosen for his deep understanding of royal history, political theory, and constitutional precedent. George wasn't being raised simply to inherit the throne. He was being raised to understand the difference between possessing the crown and earning it. Then came a rumor that seized the attention of royal watchers worldwide.